Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. It's Friday, September 16th. You've joined here today for a webinar by Move to Impact. So you might see a few different team members here. So I'm Josephine, going to be leading this discussion today. And in the other screen here, we have Skadi on the left, and we have Amber, the two co-founders of Move to Impact. And then we have Gijs as well, who's going to be helping out with the chat and making sure that the conversation and all your questions get answered today. So like I said, the aim of our webinar today and what you've joined hoping to learn a bit more about is this B Corp certification process. So we're going to be covering different topics, a range of things from different challenges we've identified and the lessons we learned and how we overcame those challenges. Our own B Corp certification process, so we newly became a certified B Corp, and how we've also learned from guiding others, and also bigger topics such as on the question of why to become a B Corp, and a range of other things. And the general flow will be that if you have any questions throughout, feel free to pop those in the chat. Gijs will be taking note of those, and then after we've gone through a few of our bigger questions, we'll have time for the Q&A you've put into the chat, but also to open up the discussion for anyone else to unmute and to put their voice in there or to add in the chat. So your questions won't get missed, that's for sure. And now I briefly introduced myself, but I work at Move to Impact as a B Corp project manager. So this is an area that I love and have a lot still to learn from, but I've definitely learned a lot in the last year and more of loving and watching this movement. And Move to Impact itself. So we work on helping companies with practical tools, automated tools such as a prioritization tool. So that name might not sound super familiar, but we'll get into that a little bit later on. But our aim is to help make processes to become more sustainable, easier with tangible tools and templates and processes. So B Corp certification is one area we work in, but also with larger certifications such as more government regulated ones. So yeah, so maybe we can start off with a little bit more of an introduction of who are these lovely people standing in front of us. Skadi, do you want to start by introducing yourself?
Yes, thank you all for joining. I'm Skadi. I'm one of the co-founders for Move to Impact. I'm more the sustainability and innovation parts, and yeah, I'm really passionate about it and work since at least like 7 years in it, and helped companies before creating their vision, structures and processes on sustainability and how they are reaching that. So yeah, and I love working together and making it more practical and easy for companies to go through the same processes as we did.
Well, and then my name is Amber, the other co-founder. And well, to be honest, before starting Move to Impact with Skadi, I was more into reporting than into sustainability, but that makes it a really nice combination that we work together on how to report on the impact of your organization. And well, I don't know if everybody's familiar with the B Corp questions, but a lot of things are about, okay, how to measure, report, and be in control of, well, the impact your organization has on society and the planet. So yeah, I'm really passionate about making this process work in an automated way, so you don't have to put in an Excel every month, but make sure that it's just there.
Definitely, yeah. So I've had the honor of seeing both this very creative and sustainability, but also data driven, and how these two things come together with both Skadi and Amber's expertises and how they've built this company. So we're talking about the B Corp certification process, right? Maybe Skadi, could you walk us through just in 1 minute, what does that certification process look like? So we've had a few questions already, a bit of the basics of B Corp certification.
Yeah, so the basic of the B Corp certification is that, yeah, you enroll basically online and try to fill in the BIA, the B Impact Assessment online. It's a really long questionnaire of over 200 questions, trying to understand it and fill all of that in. Then you improve also your actions within your company. So it's on financial, social, and ecological terms. So especially on like these topics, you will move forward and bring more actions in. And specific here is also the governance part, the workers part, and you can think about really questions like, do you have like a breastfeeding policy, or how many percentage of your employees have a minimum wage, for example? So also how many interns do you have, and full-time workers? So these are all these questions, these nitty-gritty ones. Then the next step is to improve all of that and try to get to 80 points, because this is the amount of points that gets you certified. So try always to get like above a little bit the 80 points, because in the next part in the interview with B Labs, where they check basically what you submitted basically to them, they are able to like reduce a couple of your points, because it's not really what you understood, or you understood it a little bit too positive basically in there. And then after that interview, you have to send a couple of more in-depth documents, for example, financial documents from your bank or something, to make sure how your revenue is structured, or your company as like a legal entity is structured. And then when all of that is fine, then you sign basically B Corp declaration, and then you become a B Corp.
Amazing, amazing. That's the general process with impact assessment, different evidence needed to be submitted. And a lot of you may be currently in that impact assessment, already moving towards a potential interview you might have to complete. So you might be at different parts of the process. Amber, could you maybe tell us a little bit what in your mind are some of the benefits to becoming a B Corp? So now we understand the process, but why would different companies like to become a B Corp?
Well, one thing is, 2 days after we became B Corp, we got 2 open job applicants, because they were just looking through the B Corp database, like, I want to work for a B Corp, and well, our organization looked cool. So, and Skadi asked me like, Amber, do we have a job thing open?
Posting?
Like, no.
and they're like before it was not a big challenge for us, but now it's like randomly, like every day or every second day, like applicants basically like drop in.
Yeah, so
there's a drive to work.
One of the reasons people want to get new people on board. Also, it really increases awareness about different sustainability topics in a structured way, because normally you see some people maybe intrinsically motivated about it, passionate, and want to make it work, but then it really depends on those persons. While if you're going to the B impact assessment, and because like it's about different areas, so a lot more people get involved, and then people realize like, hey, maybe I'm not really passionate about the environment, for example, but I really love to do like community work, and that's also a thing. And so it really shows that sustainability is more than just like planting trees, but it's also about having this structure within your organization that you take care of the employees. And I think that's also really a good thing about the B impact assessment, that it makes you aware of small things that most companies are like, that doesn't take a lot of effort to implement, but it gives a lot of positive impact. So I think those are 2 very
good. Yeah, and to be honest, I mean, B Corp is not the holy grail. However, it is definitely like a good structured, holistic approach for a company. Obviously, when you're a product company, you have like life cycle analysis or specific certifications as like fair trade, if you're like trading a lot with parts, but like to get like a holistic approach, and also like a structured approach, basically what also our companies and society a little bit is based on. It's really like a really clear path basically on like making or creating your first steps basically on becoming more sustainable and create more awareness and conversations about it. And I have to be honest, like as Amber said, like she's more from the reporting and the dashboarding side. We had quite some discussions and conversations in the beginning about, and like still ongoing on, for example, when we think about CO2 measurement or something, to like, oh, so we also have to be aware of like which laptops we are buying. Like this is also like a CO2 element. So this service providers we also have to be aware of, like what are all our service providers and suppliers. So really like to have this conversation and see, yes, it is definitely really broad and big, but to really like step by step, like finding it. And Amber, for example, like found then really interesting steps, like, for example, measuring our video call time so that we can see how much CO2 we are actually like spending or using, or bringing out with our video calls, because we started in the pandemic. So we're measuring that so to see how much CO2 we are spending on that, and to being aware of that. So everyone can find like their own way, even though if they're not aware of sustainability in that, if they understand it a little bit better.
Yeah. So just to summarize, I've kind of heard you both say a range of different benefits, but from the way that employees want to work more at B Corps and see the benefit of that, but also of the balance between social and environmental impacts and how they're looked at within the certification process, but also as a company as a whole. And then also the ability to take stock of the impacts and to, through the impact assessment process, really understand nitty-gritty of exactly what is our impact on different levels.
And in that sense also, it takes some conversations with people about to understand it, and that's completely fine. It just takes a little bit of time to get into it.
But at least you start
definitely.
Yeah, because that conversation you cannot like go around. It just is there basically. Yeah.
Front and center. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing just the basics of the certification process and a few of the benefits. The real aim of today's webinar is, and definitely why a lot of the attendees are here today, is to discuss more about what are the challenges that you have experienced, as well as the people and companies you've helped guide, what can be learned for the attendees from these different challenges, but then also what were your lessons and how did you overcome those? Probably more importantly, how do we move past some of those challenges? So I'd like to start, because I think between the two of you, there are a few different challenges that you experienced, maybe more from the data-driven side, maybe more from the creative or the sustainability side. So maybe Amber, do you want to start with, could you share for you what were the two greatest challenges you experienced in the B Corp certification process? But then also, how did you work to overcome those? Who guided you in that process? And what can you share for those today?
Yeah, it's kind of like every phase in the whole B Corp journey had its own challenge, because, well, we started even thinking about becoming a B Corp before we even went to the notary to like raise the firm. Then you already like, okay, what to put in those documents. Okay, then you put it online, and we just like, okay, we'll see, we'll put it in there. If we're not going to become B Corp, it's fine, but then at least we don't have to go to the notary again.
It's the mission log you're talking
about.
Yeah,
Mission log. So that you put in that we always take care of the environment and society. But what I think were my biggest challenges, and I'm still sometimes confused about that, is you have like so many things that you have impact on as an organization, but where is the part that you stop? For example, with like the CO2 measurements, I was like, okay, we don't drive cars, and we use electricity here, and okay, it's done. And she was looking at me like, Emma, no.
There's a lot more layers to it. Yeah.
And I think, I'm lucky to have like all those sustainability experts around me, so that I like at least can be challenged. But if it was like just me, for example, and all other like not sustainability expertise people in an organization, like how to know what is really in your like, at least what is scope 1, 2, 3. Okay, you can Google that and maybe try to understand. It's about emission for the people who don't know. And but then like, okay, what to include and where do I stop? And I think for me that kind of like broke my head in the beginning, because I was like, but we are not really using it there, but you're purchasing something, so they make sure that there is emissions, so you're also like responsible for that. So for me that was really hard to understand. Like Skadi said, like with the laptops, like we need to measure how much CO2 is in a laptop, and I was like, but it was already there. But of course, once it got manufactured, so that was for me really a big challenge. which also led later to another challenge, as in, well, you could say kind of, I'm like the procurement within Move to Impact. So then I suddenly have to think about, okay, our suppliers who are sustainable. And then you get in contact with them and they're like, okay, give me a sustainability vision. And you get like 3 sentences and like, okay, maybe sounds fine, but do you have proof on that? And then you come into those discussions that they are like, yeah, but why do you need it? And then you explain what we're trying to become B Corp. And I need
to become aware in sustainability in general, on like we are working with as service providers.
Yeah. And then like you get first, of course, the salesperson. They direct you to somebody who's close to sustainability within the organization. That then we are all about proving. So then I'm like, okay, I want your numbers. And that we don't have numbers. So then you come into this conversation. Okay, but how do I know for sure that your paragraph of your sustainability vision isn't just like your marketing team sitting for
wrote it,
and so, and then like for certain systems, like for example, for the financial bookkeeping, there was no sustainable option. And I've been calling like a lot of software suppliers, and it wasn't even about, okay, who's the cheapest? No, there was like none. So I was like, and that makes it kind of hard, like that you want to go for a sustainable option, but if it's not there, you kind of like feel like, okay, I'm trying here, okay?
Someone, come in my direction. Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe to summarize the 2 challenges that you had was really about knowing, especially since what we do is consulting versus maybe a more product oriented company might know a bit more. Okay, we need to include all of our supplies and all of our supply chains in our sustainability assessment, but knowing to what extent, where do we stop, as you said, in terms of what is our impact. So a lot of questions around that. And secondly, in terms of working with suppliers, but also in the bookkeeping and how to communicate these sustainability goals and reach an agreement and make sure that there's evidence to back these up. How did you, what were your next steps in addressing those?
Come back to especially like the first part of like, hey, how to measure the CO2, and this is so overwhelming. It's really like start like just easy peasy as like a tip for everyone out there. It's like, it's not about like understanding directly everything or like trying to tackle everything. It's really like just start where you are and what you can do. I think that's already a lot, and companies are most of the times more aware of it than they think. For example, like, yes, companies want to be inclusive, but they're not saying that they want to be more inclusive and that they want to attract people like in a more inclusive way, for example. Like just being aware of all these things, and also like wanting to come more with a bike to work and only using public transport, for example. Most companies have that already, or like let people like work at home, for example, at the moment. So it's completely fine to just communicate where you are in that sense.
And one extra challenge that was for me a challenge that I try to solve for the rest of the world now is like setting up all those policies.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, like, for me, the 2 biggest challenges were like, what are the policies? Because let's be honest, yes, this is a big step also in the impact assessment, and it's important to write that down, because like otherwise you always forget it and you have no document where to come back to. It feels like a nitty-gritty work and a boring work, but then at least like you can come back to like these decisions you made of like, oh yes, we want to recycle, oh we want to use refurbished laptops, or for example here in our office we said like we use only second-hand materials and like build stuff on ourselves or with our team together. So it was a good team exercise, by the way. It was really nice. And that was definitely a biggest challenge. But for me, actually, the biggest challenge was our offices, because in the beginning we didn't had like one office altogether. It was like everyone were like somewhere else, or it was like a smaller company, worked at home. So how are you measuring that? That was a big challenge in the beginning. And then now, since we have an office since 1.5 years, it's like how are you measuring with them together, or like have a basically a facilitation that cares about it. So we specifically like searched for like our office with office provider, or basically a workspace that is willing basically to give us information and just working towards creating a CO2 dashboard for everyone to understand how big their CO2 footprint is, which is a big thing and where we also help them with, which is really nice. But that was definitely our biggest challenge, because a lot of questions are about that, and that is also a big part obviously about the work. But I understand also from clients that this is a big challenge.
Maybe to slow things down a little bit, we're having a few people that are wondering a bit more if maybe we can give a practical example of how to make sure that you went far enough with a specific topic, for example, and knowing our impact. I don't know, maybe you mentioned the laptop discussion or topic, maybe giving a practical example to know how far should a company look in order to know their environmental and sustainable and social impact.
What do you mean specifically with far? How far?
Yeah, so the question is related to how to make sure that someone is maybe looking far enough down the supply chain, or knowing at what point, how far does their impact go? For example, buying a laptop and then the materials needed to make the laptop. How far, this is a question from the audience, that how far
to go with that?
And maybe an example with that.
Referring to the B Corp, B impact assessment, most of the times you get like a couple of options at the question, basically like, oh, have you checked your service providers, or do you know, do you use second-hand or refurbished or recycled products or something like that? And there you see already a little bit of degradation of like, oh, what you should, like where you can start with, or what you can like try to aim for. So it's not that you have to like, for example, go to Microsoft or Apple and say like, you have to give me now precisely the footprint. And yes, we all would love to have that. And we see that it is so far not possible. And Amber, for example, like created like a question at Microsoft, like, yes, we want to have like all the emails tracked and the video calls to be like aware. This is like an extensive way basically.
Not an expectation for most
it's not an
companies.
expectation to do that. It's like the expectation of like being aware of it and asking yourself like, what do you want to do with it? Do you want to just buy your products in a shop and don't think about it? Or do you think about, hey, can I get a second-hand version or a refurbished version? I mean, like Microsoft and Apple also put on their official website refurbished options out there. So that's completely fine. And especially then with measuring CO2, because there it comes a little bit down to, that's like scope 3. So start first with scope 1 and 2. So measuring your water, energy bills, and seeing how much is basically from you in there, to start basically there, and your waste also, and whether you recycle it or what are your options basically to recycle. Really start with this like basic things, and then basically extend from there, and don't start with like going to Microsoft and Apple and trying to get the print of the laptop.
So Yasmin, to answer your question, I think that's a really good idea and framework, is really starting with these scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions and working through each component, and to track your emissions and think through the whole process there. And the other questions that are being dropped into the chat box, we're just going to jump back to those after we've gone through this discussion, but they will be answered. We'll just open up the floor a bit more towards the end. But to summarize those two, Skadi, did you say everything you wanted to in terms of on the greatest challenges and lessons that you learned? Was there anything else you had to add there?
The greatest, the challenges, definitely. The greatest lessons learned is, I guess, like what I said a little bit earlier, I think we are all a lot scared to start with sustainability and to talk about it.
Daunting.
Want to greenwash, and you see how people get bashed online for like doing it and all of that. I think it's more about like starting to communicate where you're at, and not trying to communicate like, oh, I try to be the best, or I try to reach this, because like everyone is pressured to directly set goals. No, it's first about like starting with like understanding, like becoming sustainable is like in 4 steps: is informing, measuring, reducing, and then compensating. So really like inform yourself and try to measure, and then it's like setting goals and reducing. iterating basically on top of this goal. So you don't have to like directly set goals and then do it. So just communicate on where you are, and we're like, we try to figure out this, or we try to do better in these elements. Can you help us? Or we want to attract companies in that, or service providers or partners, and we are open for that. Just saying that is just as like a vulnerable and like normal statement of like saying, hey, we try to go in that direction, and it's a learning process. And that's, I think, the biggest learning for me, also for ourselves. Like, we put everything on our website as well, on our impact and what we try to like do step by step. Our next step is to do a materiality analysis, or a deep dive into our sustainability and our topics. So I also can say, like, we are not a sustainable company, so there is no sustainable.
It's only a process.
It's just like a process of like trying to be more responsible for social and ecological means, and also on the financial part. We also say we're no tree huggers. We come from a corporate background, so we understand the financial aspect, and that definitely belongs to companies. So it's definitely the 3P: people, planet, profit.
Yeah, and what's also nice is that like one of the main things of the B Corp movement is that you sign the Declaration of Interdependence, and that B Corp, B Lab already says like we're doing our best. Other people can do their best, but we depend on each other. Like I said, if there's no sustainable supplier for a bookkeeping system, well, then I'm depending on others like to create that. And that's also like, I think the nice thing about like the whole B Corp movement is they don't claim to like change the world. They just claim that we all need to take steps and be aware and like make each other responsible for the impact we all have, because we can only like think about our own, but like as a client you can ask your supplier like, hey, I think this is important, and I want the workers to be, and I want to make sure that like there's less waste within the supply chain. And if we are all like looking up towards the suppliers, then the end client doesn't have to like isn't forced to make a bad decision anymore. And I think that's kind of like if we are all challenging ourselves to well, be aware of, okay, what are we sponsoring with our money, since well, buying something is kind of sponsoring that brand, and
voting with your money in a way.
And therefore they always say like follow the money. If it goes up and it's like a sustainable way, then at least you know like, okay, it's not going somewhere like a bad initiative, but it's always like be aware of where the money goes.
And directly saying on like what is sustainable, then a lot of people ask like, oh, so what is sustainable? I don't know how to choose. It's already enough if you choose the things with the green labels, or the like things that want to promote something more green, because they are showing already that they want to do a step, or that they at least have a product or a service in that direction. And that is already like the right direction going there, because then it's easier for that company to make a bigger step towards like sustainable services. And what Amber also said is like, it's not about like whether you should choose for the B Corp certification or not. It's more about like, what path do you want to take to become a more sustainable company, you know, like
the bigger picture.
Not that process. So what else are you going to do a little bit, you know, where are you taking the steps and trying to develop into a more innovative and understanding company?
Yeah, definitely. Well, let's dive into the next question, because I know there are quite a few good ones being put into the chat. So get ready for that. There'll be some questions coming your way. But before we go there, I'd like to ask, since we at Move to Impact are a B Corp now, but we also guide companies in the B Corp certification process, were there any differences between the companies you've guided through the process, maybe seeing it more from the sidelines a bit versus doing it yourself, maybe giving advice versus implementing it yourself? I see both of you reacting in an agreed way. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, to be honest, we are a startup, and if we're like helping a company which like has processes that are already there for a long time, for us, like unlimited holidays, okay, put it in there, and we were planning to do it anyway, and not because of B Corp, but I can imagine if you
unlimited holidays for our employees is like a service, basically, right?
it's our secondary.
More as an explanation.
Oh yeah. But
What does that mean? Yeah.
with organizations that are bigger, well, they need to budget things, and some things that are low-hanging fruit questions for smaller companies may be harder for larger companies, but also
Could you maybe just define what you mean by low-hanging fruit questions?
Like the questions in the B impact assessment that you think like, hey, that doesn't take a lot of effort for us to put in order.
So easy to attain.
Yeah, but like for us, well, some things just cost like a lot of investment as money wise, and it's not that we don't want to do it, but we first have to like make sure that we can do it. Well, for other organizations, that's just like because you're growing, that's part of the process. So then you get there like the easy points, which are harder for a smaller company. And while looking at their own process, but also like guiding clients, you already see a lot of different challenges with every company. But the thing that they all have in common is relying on your office facilities, because you're super dependent and you have to start the conversation, and already starting the conversation is a thing, but then you already need some indicators. If you're in a shared service for office, not even like a co-office, but like with multiple floors, they're like, there's only like one water meter for the whole, so maybe if we are reducing, but are like neighbors from the upper floor, they are like, I don't know, watering everything all day long,
getting new plants.
So that's kind of like the main thing that everybody challenges with, but for the rest is really dependent on the culture of your organization, whether it's flat or hierarchical, whether it's having to do service so that like everything is different.
But what I also saw is like a completely different thing for us or from our clients is definitely the two things. Like one, the complexity of the legal structure of the company, because like some companies have like a whole Christmas tree of like companies and everything. So you have to be aware how much percentages of your company is really from yourself or within the company you want to certify, which part of the organization are you certifying, and make sure basically that the contracts are aligned with each other, so that, for example, you not make a company a B Corp and then one of, or like a group, a B Corp, and then one of the companies in there are actually not obliged to be sustainable or like do the same social aspects basically in the company. That's really
different structures.
And I definitely see that we had challenges with understanding the B impact assessment questions, but we see that our clients have much bigger challenges with it. So that's why, for example, in we have a whole Q&A part which we put together, so to really explain like all the questions we got, especially from clients, and also on the low-hanging fruit questions in our prioritization tool, we put a whole overview and points connected to it for each individual company to be able to understand basically the low-hanging fruit questions for their company basically.
Definitely. So we've designed these tools knowing that these different struggles. Awesome. I'm tempted to head to some of the Q&A questions because they're already quite directly related. So even on that last topic we were just touching on, we have a question about, can you also focus and certify one particular brand within your assortment, or does this have to be the whole organization?
Well,
it's a lot of.
You can be like B Corp certified for like for the consumer. So if you have like a group with different brands with different websites, to be honest, you need a B Corp certification for each one website, because for a consumer it's really hard to see like, oh, there is this group above that I don't know and all these companies are, so then you really don't put it on your website, because for B Corp, it's also about like showing that you take care and use your force for good. So that, and if you're also, for example, having a brand with multiple locations within the same country, you cannot say, okay, Amsterdam and Utrecht are certified and the rest isn't. It's kind of like, because you have like one website for like for the whole, for example, the Netherlands. But for example, I saw that the Danone Japan is also here. Like Danone has different like legal structures for every country. So it's not that Danone Global is B Corp certified, but like Danone Japan is, Danone UK. But for example, maybe Danone Spain, I don't know, it can be the case that it's not B Corp certified because they have their own website.
Right. It's a like different branch. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much. So we have a few questions back to the B Corp certification. I think this one's super interesting. So maybe jumping back first, we have someone asking about how long the entire certification process took, and if we could disclose our final BIA score, which we definitely can. And then now that we are B Corp certified, what are our goals to maintain it? So we maybe want to first touch back on how long each of the parts took, what our B Corp score is, but then also now that we are B Corp, how we're not, what our next steps are.
So how long it took, like we directly did it from the beginning because it was just like our vision in general for the company on the.
So how old is the company? So what do you mean by the beginning? How old?
Like 2 years ago, we directly had the idea already. That's how we started it and directly put our contracts together as well. So therefore, in the beginning, before you're like, you can certify or start basically submitting your score and get into the waiting line for when you're 1 year old as a company. So therefore, before you can be B Corp pending basically, and can say basically that you are committed to that and already working on that. So that's a possibility to do that beforehand. But to be honest, in the first year, we didn't have the cash flow to finance that pending B basically. So we didn't choose for it, and we're working internally on it, and we're doing it.
Trusting the process.
Yeah, just in the process. And then there is, when you submit, basically there is a waiting row from like 6 to 10 months, basically, depending on the complexity of your company. For us, in that sense, because it was from the beginning till now, it took 1.5 years, and that's what we most of the times say also to our clients, that it takes like between a year and 1.5 years, because you have to understand like how much to go through the questionnaire and like put all the questions in there, and then you have to submit, and how far basically you already are on being a sustainable company. You either have to work on like getting the points, and then it takes longer, and then basically the waiting line is starting. But we definitely advise already companies to also use this like waiting period a little bit to enhance basically your actions, because that's definitely possible during the waiting line to enhance your points basically.
The quickest way would be like, for example, if a company like fills in the BIA today and it's already like 90 to 100 points, if you then submit. Then it will take at least like 6 months in order. So like the shortest amount of time is like 6 months, but then you should be like today ready to submit.
Be also realistic with how you fill in the questions, because if you fill them in and it's like, oh yes, I think this is right, and oh maybe, because they're nitty-gritty questions, they will definitely check, and they want to have the evidence basically for it. And then you are going for the risk basically that when you have the interview with them, that they actually deduct the points because you cannot show the evidence for it, for all the questions you filled in. So just try to be as realistic as possible as is situation of your company.
And we also try to be a bit more optimistic, and then we got the dip to 20 points, but we still have 100.5 points.
So that's our current B Corp score. And now that we are B Corp, what are we going to do? What are our next steps? Or our goals to maintain it is how this question is phrased. Not even maintain, but improve, right? We're not just
improve. It's not maintaining, it's improving, definitely. Like our goal was to have at least 100 points. Like we got it, like a little bit more, 100.5.
Just barely.
And we would have loved to have 120, but that obviously like we need to work for that and have to improve everything. So as I said, the next step in general on the sustainability path is to do a materiality analysis to know like where our risk topics are basically as a company, because we are a service provider and more into the technical tools and services. So therefore we have to see what topics are from our stakeholders, but also internally from us important to check and to measure also on, so that we can then set goals and reduce more on that, or like improve on that. But B Corp wise, we have basically an annual meeting about that and really like see what are the goals we want to achieve in that year. And since we work on materiality topics or CO2 topics already with our shared working space where we are at, where we have our office, so in that sense, we're working already on there. And in the impact assessment, you can put like stars on some of the questions so that you see that these are goals. So we put a couple of goals in there so that it's easier for us to understand what are our goals and where we should look into, basically.
Yeah.
And also,
so
like, if we improve like our economic performance, then we can also think about, okay, how to add more benefits for the employees, and like, because currently it was like, okay, bare minimum, because like we need to start this up, but like on all the 5 impact areas have like small goals, working towards them, and then hopefully in 2025 we'll have
recertification
points.
Yes, so that
that's it went obviously like to be one of the world's best. We want to get there, not because like we want to have a prize, but since we are a sustainability company and every one of us wants to strive for like being better and contribute to it, it's important to us.
Right. So we saw in our BIA and in our B Corp scores like our certain struggles with certain environmental topics because of our working in a co-working space. So those are definitely some of our goals moving forward. So we have a couple questions on CO2 footprint. I'll just kind of run through an overview and then you can choose how to answer them. So we have a question about tools. So what tools do you prefer for measuring CO2 footprint for video calls / office life? So we talked about that a little bit. We also had a question, I lost it. What tool? Yes, we have that. And then someone in CO2 measurement, did you also consider this CO2 issued by softwares, websites? We've touched on that a little bit. Maybe it's, since we did measure that, how did we measure that of issued by the softwares, websites, or were these left aside? I think we talked about that a little bit earlier, that it was more of an extra added thing that we did, but just to summarize, did we use a specific kind of tool, and how did we measure the software and websites?
Well, to, for example, start with the video calls, if you look at the admin portal of your Microsoft Teams, you can see like the usage. And first I directly attached that to Power BI, so like a dashboard tool. And then I found out that it only saves the data for 90 days.
So you have
So now it's like a monthly thing to just put in the minutes there, like to finalize the month. And also things like that we don't use cars, and if we do, we use the electric ones. And I don't want to call out loud, but I asked, do I need to put in CO2 anything there? But currently not.
That is definitely an improvement point to like check that out more. And with the shared cars we are using, and we're only using electric cars, for example. So therefore, like putting that also more in our CO2 overview. With coming back to the video calls, we use like most of the time when you put in like, oh, how much CO2 is one video call at like Google, you get definitely a number on like what it is. If you check like compare like 2-3 websites, then you directly see, oh yeah, this is a little bit the number you have to work with. At the moment, there is no complete specific tool which can do everything. So that's for us also a challenge to understand like, hey, which CO2 tool should we use for all of it. that was really is also a challenge. So all the scope 3 elements, for example, on like the laptops, the products we are using, or anything about that, we put in Excel and get a general number basically online to just at least like have it in there, and try to be as open in it as we can at the moment. And that is also a process of like growing in that. It's like you cannot do everything at the same time. You cannot do the social 100%. You cannot do the ecological element in that sense. You cannot do the financial element and all of that all the time. Yeah. But what we also did when using our online web hosting, there is like sustainable online web hosting, for example. Like some software can be found which is sustainable, and you also see that on our website. There's also a website checker basically, whether that is green website hosting or not. So when you scroll down on our website, you see the company which checks basically the web hosting, and that is a general thing. The moment we are trying to put a subscription in something, buy something, it's a general check in our company. How sustainable is this company? Is there at least like something standing on that side? That's the first part. If not, write them an email and ask like, what is your sustainability policy? What are you doing? And most of the time, you know, if they send you just a sheet of paper with just text on it and no numbers, that's like just basically, how you say it, warm air. It's like nothing really, nothing really with consistency, basically. Yeah.
Just looking at the time, we have about 9 more minutes left, and we have 3 roughly topic questions left. I don't know how much in detail we want to go into each of them, maybe some of them. So we have a question about documentation for the impact business model, what you would suggest providing. Then we also know we have someone in here who's looking at recertification, if you have maybe 1 or 2 tips. And then someone's also asked about current news surrounding and more negative news surrounding B Corp, if you had maybe 1 or 2 sentences on that. And then we will wrap up. So kind of speed going through these last few things. But what about documentation for the impact business model?
The business impact model, as in if you get certain points for it in the impact assessment, is that what?
Yes, documentation for the impact business model.
Every question just asks for certain information, and as soon as you hit the submit button, like people from B Lab will ask you like, hey, can you please provide me evidence on this? For example, I want to see your policy, or I want to see, or they send you a template from that you have to fill in. Like for example, we get like, our impact business model is that we help our clients make impact. So that we had to show like, okay, who are our clients? What are they doing? And how much revenue did we generate with that? But that is not something we could prepare in advance. It's something we got from them because they saw, oh, that's your impact business model. Okay, then please give us extra information.
Yeah, you can think a little bit in the B Corp score. There are like 2 parts basically. There are the practical parts, like the questions on the 5 topics and like governmental workers, communities, and all of that. And then there is the business impact models. The business impact models is a little bit a gray zone because like, and it's already hard really to advance basically your points there, because it's about your strategy and what you're doing with your company. That's why it's most of the times the best to focus on the practical part and the action-driven part, where you can actually like enhance your sustainability on that, because you're not going to completely throw around your business strategy. On B Corp, on the B Corp website, you can find also more information about the impact models, on what are the definitions basically in there. And we also summarized and referred back to B Corp in our prioritization tool in that, Maybe Gijs, you can also put the link of the prioritization tool in the chat, so that the audience can have a look at the tool we created.
Yeah, what I also think within the time it's important, like about the negative news. Well, we don't well, we kind of like, okay, we see, like already said, we see B Corp shouldn't be like the thing everybody's working for, but that this B impact assessment starts well, the organization to set up policies, to start measuring, and at least they all commit, like legally commit to making positive changes towards the environment and the planet and the society. And like, okay, maybe like this B Corp, some B Corps are like, well, having less negative impact than others, but like Skadi already said, no company is completely sustainable, because then, well, we are all like taking something from the earth, and there are always people like giving their time, and whether it's on living wage yet or not, that's like the discussion. But at the end of the day, all those companies started like the journey to well, creating awareness, putting in processes, and of course there are some doubts about but that isn't like seen as this, well, typical using force for good business. But like the impact assessment validation shows such a lot of evidence that well, you can say for sure there are like measurements in place, there are policies in place, and like maybe there are some organizations that have like really good marketing and sustainability and are less sustainable, and others having like a different approach but are really working on it. And I think this whole discussion within the B Corp family makes it a bit harder to like tell the story out loud, that it's not about being the best B Corp or being the best sustainable organization, it's about being interdependent.
Yeah, and it directly like referring to the recertification there, that is what I like about this certification, or love about the certification, is that like you're getting recertified every 3 years. And I know that B Corp internally is like working a lot on like connecting more the community, and also with the critical parts like coming up on that's really like enhancing and trying to improve always the B Corp core in the years so far. That was not in there, but probably that is coming in the future, and that is really exciting. And it's also it's a step-by-step process. I never have seen somewhere else like a practical step-by-step process that companies can actually follow, because that is one of the biggest questions from clients, from us, like, so what is the easiest way? Like also now in the chat, like what is too far, what is just okay? Like just following the step-by-step process is already really nice. And they update it every 3 years, so that you know that when you go through the recertification process and add your new financial statements, because when you add the new financial statements, you get the recertification update basically in your company every year. Then you're up to date, and then you know basically where you can grow more, at least like on the basic level, if you're not a crazy sustainability person and want to grow your company step by step in there.
Definitely. It's looking a bit like it's time to wrap up, but I do think this topic that we're just touching on now at the end, and specifically this paper that came out and the different discussions surrounding B Corp, are super important, and definitely something we'll be talking about more in another webinar. Is that correct? That we hope to dive more into. So definitely worthy of space and talking about it. We also have added a few links in the chat. Gijs has been, if you'd like to read, we wrote a little bit more also on different statements from our team on this topic as well, but also on just why we became a B Corp, a little bit of that philosophy and motivation behind. Also the link to the next webinar if you'd like to join. And then a few of our different consulting packages and processes. So we've talked about this prioritization tool as one way that we can help you, linked to a larger conversation and consulting process. But yeah, any final words or final thoughts?
Yeah, I love to, or we love to support companies like and where they are in their process, and not just like trying to get them as fast to the most sustainability way, but really like meet them where they are.
Taking the time.
So that's why we also have like 3 different ways, like either like do it yourself and have an overview in that, like a consultancy service where you get all our tools and all our lessons learned and experience basically, and have a couple of consultants competency sessions, or like a completely carefree version where we guide you basically to the end of the assessment and to the interview. So just check it out on our website so that you really feel flexible also in your support and your B Corp journey.
In the amount that you need. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you all so much for joining us today. And good luck with your B Corp journey. And let us know if we can help you in any way. Okay.
Thank you so much, everyone. And yeah, if you have any questions, send us a message at Move to Impact, the team at movetoimpact.com. Have a good day, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.